Hello, welcome to Art Tutorials Online. My name is Paul Priestley and today we're going to be looking at the third in my series on edges, not outlines. And we're going to be drawing a crumpled piece of paper to show you how to draw the edges and get some very nice subtle tones. So let's make a start. Come on. Right, you can see I'm using a sheet of paper which I've just folded up very simply. Don't make it too complicated. Just adjust it round to get some nice curves there. I'm now going to adjust the light. So we'll turn off a few lights, get it sorted. There we go. Now, I'm going to be using a pencil, a 6B pencil and pieces of graphite. You can see I've already created the drawing and I'm measuring, comparing the drawing with the original still life to get accuracy. If you want to see how to do this in reality, then check out this video at the top that's on the screen now, and it will show you how to draw still life accurately. Now, I'm going to go around the edges first of all, just as I've done in previous videos. You can see here I'm using the technique of the graphite, using the side of the graphite, but pressing on with one edge slightly more than the other, and that creates a sharper edge one side and a softer edge the other side, so I can emphasize it. But if you look carefully at the drawing above, you will notice that there are very subtle shadows in the background. So you have to vary the tone of the graphite by pressing on different ways. So sometimes you're pressing on quite hard, sometimes you're pressing on quite softly, sometimes you start very hard and then gradually change the pressure. So the tone of the mark that you are making varies. It's a very subtle thing you need to do. You'll notice here the shadow only goes in strength part way down this edge. I've got to try to suggest that, and I can only do that by varying the pressure on the graphite. So the subtlety is really, really important, and you've got to be able to vary pressure. Don't press on the same way all the time. Now, using the 6B pencil here, again, I'm pressing on very lightly, but I just want to suggest that gradual change here. You see where the paper's folded, there's a slight shadow there, but it's very soft. I'm now going to suggest that shadow by just coming along here. This sheet of paper is quite light at this point, so I am pressing on very, very faintly with my graphite, as you can see. You see, it's working very, very softly. Now, this area here is quite subtle. I've got this bend in the paper, as you can see, but you'll notice it leaves a white highlighted edge. That white highlighted edge is really important. By leaving that, you get the nice contrast and you get the sense that the paper has got some volume to it. It's got a curve to it. You'll notice now I'm gradually changing the tone as we're coming down here. It's getting very, very much lighter. But as I go around this edge, the edge here is quite strong. So I'm pressing on very hard on the edge of my graphite and less so in the middle. So I get that soft, subtle change of tone. Now, I'm strengthening that edge, as you can see here, and you'll notice as soon as you make these edges very dark, they tend to stand out a little bit more. You see, because of the contrast between that and the lighter tones. Now, we'll come back to this edge later on, but I just want to suggest this section here because this I'm going to do with pencil because it's a very sharp edge, but it's also very dark. And I want a nice clean edge, and it's easier to create using a pencil. Now, you'll notice again, I'm using variations of tone. Now, going back to my graphite, I'm pressing on really hard near the shading I've just done, and then less so as I come down here. So it's a gradual change of tone. Now you'll notice that I'm using my left hand occasionally. You will probably find it easier to turn the paper around, but I can't do that because I've got the camera above and it's going to look a bit of a mess from what you see. So I've got to use both hands. I believe it's called being ambidextrous, but There we go. Anyway, let's move on. Now, I use with a pencil, I'm going to create again this sharp edge here. You can see how it's beginning to develop, and I'm going to use my graphite then just to come along here. But I've got a little bit of reflected light along that edge. Can you see that? So I'm not shading right up to the edge. I'm leaving that little area of lighter tone just to give you that nice soft, subtle reflected edge. Strengthen this with a piece of graphite. This is also 6B graphite, and gradually developing this tone. Now it's quite dark at the moment, we'll come back and soften that later on. But I just want to establish the very dark tones in there, so I've got a reference point. Because one of the things about doing something like this, where you've got lots of subtle tones, is to make sure you are constantly comparing and contrasting. So for example, the edge that I've just created with a pencil is very dark. How dark is it compared to this edge? Is this edge darker or lighter? You see, I'm constantly thinking about that because that's what you've got to do. Now, I'm just developing this edge here. It's quite dark, as you can see. I'm having to swap my arms over again, my hands over again, which is quite a difficult thing to do. But you'll notice the corner of this piece of paper here is quite strong and quite dark. And you'll notice how the soft, subtle tones underneath against this sharp, dark edge now, which is just underneath my hand, you will see really stands out. It's all about contrast of tone, but also contrast of edges, sharp edges against soft edges. You see the line down the centre here, where you get the fold, again is a soft edge. So I don't want a very sharp line down there. So this is why I'm doing it with the graphite. You'll notice again, this section here, right in the corner, I'm not taking the shadow right up to the edge, because again, you've got the thickness of the paper. You want to suggest that subtle round shape, that rounded fold, and it's quite dark along there. You can see that slight reflected edge again there. I'm not going right up to the edge because it leaves that nice little bit of subtlety there. But this is a dark tone, as you can see. Notice how it compares with the first dark tone that I did in pencil. You see, we're coming around here. Notice now as I put that edge in, you see how the fold in front of it stands out. But now I'm going to have to go back to look at that and make that darker later on. This is why I'm comparing and contrasting all the time. You don't necessarily finish one bit completely and then move on to the next. You're developing sections and then strengthening them, comparing. You see now I'm developing this edge, making it darker so that it fits in properly with the fold on the other side. So you can see how this now is beginning to develop. We're beginning to strengthen the edges with the pencil, as you can see here, trying to make this now a little bit softer and a little bit more subtle as we come down. So there's little half tones going in there. See the idea with the pencil? Variations of tone. It's all about variation. It's really, really important that you can control the amount of pressure that you put on with your pencil, because if you can't do that, you're not going to get the very soft, subtle tones. You see here, I'm just now using my pencil to strengthen edges, to strengthen lights and darks, just to go over some sections, because you'll notice although some of these shadows, particularly on the background, are quite soft and subtle, there are some edges there, but some of them are very soft edges. Some, like this one here, is very sharp. Here, very sharp, but then becomes much more soft, much more subtle. You see how we begin to gradually start building up these shapes and these tones. So we're suggesting the folds in the piece of paper. Now you can use this sort of technique for folds in material, folds on clothes. It's all the same thing. It's all about sharp edges, soft edges, variations of tone, contrast between light and dark, variations in pressure on the pencil or variations in pressure on the graphite. Most important. Now, I'm just finishing off now by developing some of these tones, strengthening some in certain areas. You can go through, if you've made areas too strong, you can just go over with an eraser, just use that almost like a drawing implement, just to lighten a tone if it's become too dark. You can focus on some of the more subtle shadows, as you can see here. Now we're coming to the end of the drawing. I hope you've managed to follow this okay. What you've got to remember is subtlety, pressure, changing edges, all of that sort of thing. Really important. I cannot stress more, it is really, really important you remember that. It's all about the pressure you put on to create the various shades and tones. It's also about how much pressure you put on edges, contrast of edges, sharp edges, soft edges. This is what you're looking for when you're creating folds. Good luck with your drawing, and I shall see you in the next video. Thank you for watching Art Tutorials Online. I hope you've enjoyed the video and learnt something more about subtlety in creating edges. If you like the video, please subscribe to my channel. And if you really want to support the production of these videos, then please check out my Patreon channel. That will be wonderful and much appreciated. Thank you very much.